You are listening to the Hammersy Brothers e-commerce podcast. Like what you hear and want to take the shortcut on your e-commerce growth? Join hundreds of brands that work with us and head over to joinhb.com. That's joinhb.com and see how we can help you further. Join our members and smash your targets and unlock the profits within your e-commerce site. Hello, Ian. Here we are. We are back.
We are. It's been a while.
It has. Yeah. Particularly as we tried to come back earlier and we had technical difficulties with new computers and things, all sorts of stuff. So we were away the whole of August. And
where have we been?
Well, we met face to face, didn't we? We came over to the UK and we did all sorts of wonderful summer things. It was lovely.
How have people been coping without the Hammersy Brothers podcast?
I don't know.
What have people been doing? How have people gone to the gym and gone on the treadmill?
What were people listening
at night?
To on their holidays? It's just crazy. It's crazy.
To
be honest,
we can say these things because we're English, and English people are not good at promoting themselves.
No.
So we are famous for self-deprecated humour.
Yeah.
So we can say it, because
yeah,
it's not like the English thing, is it?
It's better to be better than you are and understate what you can do. It's easy, less stress.
Yeah. But we have actually been quite busy, haven't we? We've been doing we've been doing some interesting stuff, and that's what we're going to talk about, isn't it? So is there any more preamble? How's the weather? Do you want to go about? I think August was quite good. For UK, August was strong. I think US was okay in August, but I think August was particularly strong in the UK. Ecom.
Well, I think
generally.
One thing we're going to talk about is the 5 types of business. So I won't steal your thunder, but for the volume retailers, most of them did well. Most of them did really well in August. Some of the ones that are building like a snowball kind of business, it kind of rocked it a little bit because of people going on holiday. But ultimately, like the bedding site had a phenomenal month. Like it was up like 177% year on year, and last year wasn't small. So it did seriously well, which is great to see. And I think we saw quite a few people being able to increase their spend whilst being more profitable during August. And so that's all good, isn't it? That's all good.
Yeah. No. I think generally August was quite encouraging for most of our clients and then most of our people on the level 2 on the Hammersy Brothers program. And it comes back to what we're gonna chat about. I've lost you. You're like drifting off.
I'm just trying to find. You're about to ask me what the 5 businesses are, and I'm finding them in your WhatsApp and pasting them down the bottom of your WhatsApp, so you know what they are.
Listen, I'm going to ask you some questions because this is something that you've been working on. But when you're genuinely trying to ask someone a question and they're literally like looking out the window, it's slightly off-putting.
How do you know your video might be over there? You don't know.
Oh yeah,
that could be where your head is.
Pretend.
Yeah.
Pretend we're in the same room. You've just WhatsApped me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, with the answers. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we didn't plan these things. Anyway, listen, I'll tell you what we've been working on, and I think it's fascinating.
That'd be good to know.
And I think it's the it's something that we've talked about in the past, and there is a real danger, a big danger that people go down when they're strategizing and thinking about their e-commerce, in that they assume that one size fits all. If it's going to work for one e-commerce business, it's going to work for me. And that we've said many, many, many times that is wrong. The one size fits all is wrong. And the reason it's wrong is because if you apply the wrong strategy for one particular e-commerce business, it doesn't work. And I think the retail high street is a really good example of that. If you're walking down there, just to put into context of what I mean, is that if you walk into this weekend, I was in Trafford Centre in Manchester, and I was walking through the shops, and every one of them is laid out differently, which is a unique customer experience based on the emotional needs of that customer. So the hardware store is laid out differently to the jewellery store. The jewellery store is laid out differently to the shoe store, etc., etc., etc. And of course, it's pretty obvious that it should be a different experience. And based on the emotional needs, the average order value, the length of purchase, etc., they're very, very different. How the stores are laid out, and it's obvious in a retail physical environment that one size doesn't fit all, because you'd be foolish to lay out the jewelry store in the same way that you lay out the hardware store. It'd be completely wrong, because conversion rate would plummet, average order value would plummet. It just wouldn't work. Yet, for some stupid reason, and I know why this has happened, but for some stupid reason in e-commerce, we have all traditionally been told the lie that one size fits all. And the reason that happened is because the e-commerce industry in its infancy, and I'm going back like 20 years ago, was led by developers. Developers were the guys or girls that led the conversation about how to grow an e-commerce business, because 20 years ago, the challenge was a technological one. It was who had the best technology.
Yeah.
Whereas now, everybody's got the same technology, Shopify and Klaviyo and things like that, and Google Shopping, PMax, Advantage Plus on Facebook. Everybody's got this incredible technology at their fingertips in a way you didn't have 20 years ago. So the conversation now is not on that technology. So it's even more relevant that one size doesn't fit all. However, I'm going to pass it over to you in a moment, that when we say, hey, you can't apply the one size fits all, well, it's pretty unhelpful, because, well, which size do I fit then? Or which one is it? Who should I listen to? And that's what you and me
are going to help with,
but mainly you have been working on this summer, is identifying what type of e-commerce business you are, and then applying the playbook for each one, and that is the start of something big, and it's the cornerstone of all the work that we've been doing, and everybody in the program is actually understanding what type of e-commerce business you are, and then applying the right strategy. And we've seen this loads and loads of times, haven't we? That if you see something that's working on one site and you put it on another and it just doesn't work, it bombs, and you're like, why the hell didn't that work? That's interesting, and then you realise that you've applied it for the wrong type. So. Yeah. Do you want to take over from here and tell everybody more about the 5 e-commerce types?
5 e-commerce types. I'll go through the 5 e-commerce types. And like we said, we've been banging on about there's no one size fits all for e-commerce. And it's a bit like walking into a clothing store, and they walk into the clothing store and us saying, none of these clothes will fit you. And it's like, but what we need to say is we need to say which clothes will fit you and which one will be more useful, because that's more useful information. Nobody just wants to know that they can't buy anything. Yeah. So,
and in context, I'll shut up. But in context, this is based on the last 20 years worth of working with thousands of e-commerce businesses, and seeing thousands of Google Analytics accounts. And Google Ads accounts, and seeing which ones are scaling, which ones aren't. So it's based on all of that knowledge, and every single one of the businesses that scaled, and the interesting ones, the ones that scale and the ones that fail, every single one of them fit into one of these 5. So we've seen hundreds of examples of each one of each 5. And we've gone through lots and lots and lots and gone, well, what e-commerce business would this? Would this be a 1 or 2 or a 3? And it all nicely, neatly falls in. Sometimes you can be a bit of all, but anyway.
Yeah, so
I'll shut up now.
Let's go through the 5. Otherwise, we may have overplayed our hand. Otherwise, so effectively, the first step is to understand which of the 5 you are, and then once you know which of the 5 you are, you can work out whether the optimum spend is, what the optimum channels are, and also what the best ways are from the playbooks to understand which ones to go to. So the first one is first type of e-commerce site out of the 5 is what we call the compounding brand. So I think what we'll do, I'll just list them and then we'll go through each one in a little bit more detail. Yeah. So the first one's the compounding brand. The second one is the high ticket one timer. So basically high average order value, but mostly one's purchase. The third one is the volume retailer. The volume retailer is more like a men's clothing site, women's clothing site. You're general e-commerce. And a lot of the time when people are talking about e-commerce, they are talking about the volume retailer. That's the one they're mostly talking about because that's probably the most common one. The fourth one is the need-driven supplier. So fit into that would be like a B2B site, like Dust Spares would fit into that one. And then the fifth one is the seasonal specialist. And so within those 5 types, you've got pretty much most e-commerce sites. Now, the thing I wanted to just say before we moved on from that is that, yes, most e-commerce sites fit into one of those, but there are e-commerce sites that straddle maybe 1 or 2 of those. So you might get a little bit of both. And like there's nothing like a perfect plan until you actually put it to the market and you realize that it's a little bit of that, and it's like a little bit. There's not as black and white as you think. So I think that, but what you can see from that is there are some strategies for the other. Let's say you straddle 2 types, the other 3 types that just are not going to work for your business. It's just not where the money is, and it's a different playbook.
And I think you tend to find in most e-commerce businesses of the 5 is that there's always 1 or 2 big things. This is what these are the big things you got to get right for this type of business. And there's lots of, and I think that's where the kind of fallacy between one size fits all is, because you've got to do. It's some things have a bigger effect in some businesses than others. Take very quickly, and I want you to repeat the 5 again, but take the one that has a lot of repeat supplement business.
That's the compounding brand.
So the compounding brand, that is all about getting the second sale. Like that's one of the big core things you got to get right. If you don't get the second sale, you are within a certain 6-week period. If you don't get the second sale, you're very unlikely to get the third, fourth, fifth. And the longer you leave it, the chances of you getting the second sale drop off a cliff. So it's all about getting the second sale, because you're often recruiting at close to break even. So if you don't get the second sale, you're buggered. And so that's a key example, and that wouldn't be relevant for a single
the high ticket one timer. You should use the names we've created.
I mean, this is why I
WhatsApped it to you earlier. Podcast. You can see the names.
I don't read your WhatsApps. I mean, you've got too many words in there. But I thought I want you to go through them again. But essentially, within each one of these 5, I think there is some core things, and you and I know this. So when we're coaching people, we always go, that's the business that needs to get the second sale. Oh, that's the business that needs to get the email. Oh, that's the business that needs to increase revenue per visit on the first time purchase. There's always 1 or 2 things that we really bang home hard. Do you want to go through the 5 again, and how where do you want to take this podcast?
Well, let's just. I think we should go. I'll go through them again, and then we'll just go into detail about what they are and talk about which one's which. There's a little bit more detail. Whether you want me to do that, or you can come in as well. So there's the compounding brand. There's the high ticket one timer. There's the volume retailer. There's the need driven supplier, and there's the seasonal specialist. So those are the 5. So let's start with the compounding brand, what it is. So the compounding brand is a brand that builds long-term momentum through repeat purchases. They have strong retention, strong loyalty, and they typically are like skincare or supplements or hair shampoo or something like that, where there is usually a very high product margin and a lots of repeat. So they're kind of like the gift that keeps on giving. And you can kind of recruit with those brands usually at a quite low initial ROAS, so that you can get them on board, maybe at a 1.2 or something ridiculous. So you're just washing your face, on the first sale, and then you're compounding over and over. And so those businesses are quite different from a high ticket one time, or specifically a high ticket one time, and that's like the opposite of it. And a seasonal specialist, and a volume retailer, and a need driven supplier. Like you can't do the same things. Yeah. So the next one, do you want to talk anything about a compounding brand, or do you want to?
No, I was just going to say, but generally in the compounding business, that
why don't you talk about the ones we've been successful with?
Yeah, so some of the big brands. I mean, like Health, HEALF, who we work with, for quite a few years now. That's a great example of a compounding business, because it was all about getting the second sale. Cornish Seaweed is another example that's a great business about getting the second sale. Goat milk soap, goat milk stuff in the US. That's a great business. I mean, all these businesses have gone, from like they all started a couple of million, and some of them are now doing.
They started 50, way.
Million.
Cornish. I think Cornish came to us when they were just literally just starting. They were doing barely anything.
Yeah, and if you go back to the core things that those businesses got right, and that we worked with them on right back at the time, it was, they were all the same. It was we need to recruit profitably or just around break even. It's all about customer recruitment, and it was all about getting the second sale, and it was understanding how the maths play, because ultimately we're trying to influence the maths, but it was. I think it's important to talk about the businesses who've got it right, and I think I would also say there are certain businesses who have tried to get the second sale who aren't a compounding business, and actually they've spent months trying to implement the most amazing Klaviyo second sale flows, and it just doesn't work. Just doesn't work.
If you were selling wedding dresses, you're trying to get a second sale of wedding dress. It seems ridiculous. You're not going to sell another wedding dress. But I think what happens is you get an e-commerce consultant who's come from a supplement supplier, and they come to work for a wedding dress company, and they go, well, this is my playbook. This is what I'm going to do, and this is what I roll out. And I think that's a very extreme example, but you can see how silly it would be to do that in that case. But a lot of the time we are doing a version of that, just slightly watered down, but like not working out where to work. So like some of the compounding brands, in fact, like some of our biggest clients are actually compounding brands, because they can go so far once they get the numbers right. So you're starting to see, and there's a couple of them in level 2 that are, every month they're getting record months because they've got their figures right, and they're building and they're building and they're building. And they're really exciting, because that's there's a playbook for that. That's easy. We can do it over and over.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the high ticket one timer. High ticket one timer is the wedding dress company, but also like we work with somebody who sold electric golf buggies, things like that. Like it's a high ticket product.
Bikes. Lots of mountain bike people. So you make
a small amount of repeat. Sorry?
Yeah, give me an example of a high ticket. Like we're talking like $5,000 upward purchase here, aren't we?
Yeah. So I mean, any
or maybe anything over a couple of thousand. Yeah, $1,000 upwards probably.
So I mean, there's loads of them. But like just thinking about off the top of my head, you like people like Handling Bikes who do the bespoke bikes. So they are like a typical high-end product where you're selling a bike maybe for like £10,000 plus or something around that level, and then you don't see you might see the customer again for little bits and bobs, but like materially in terms of repeat business, it's not massive. I mean, even if someone comes back and buys a new pair of tires or some brakes or something like that, compared to the original purchase, it's nothing, is it?
I think you can see this in it's quite a lot of homeware brands actually who are selling the bigger ticket, like expensive chairs, expensive sofas, expensive dining tables, and there's lots of people on the program who have done that, where you're kind of coming in and you've got this short snap, you've got a short window where some of them take a long time to buy. So obviously we talk about the email, the playbook in the email, how you use email to get the high ticket items, you support it. And then when that sweet spot comes and how you provide the entertainment layer to actually get them to act, it's when they are buying, that's the time to get the revenue up. If you've missed it, if you're trying to go, we're trying, come back in 6 months' time, waste of time. A lot of these are hobby lifestyle ones. So particularly if you're doing it with your house or you're cycling, you're tapping into an emotional hobby or need at that particular time, and it tends to be a phase. So you got to hit them.
Yeah,
really
low-end
hard.
design studios is another one we're working with at the moment, and they will be classed as a high ticket one-timer because obviously they make not obviously because people won't know, but they make bespoke dining room tables and conference tables. And so in Canada, servicing the US and Canada, and so if someone buys a conference table, more likely than not, there's probably a one-off, or even if it isn't a one-off, they'll probably get them all at the same time. It's not like they go, because it's done, isn't it? It's not saying, well, every month we're going to need your new conference table. It's just not that kind of business.
Yeah.
And
they're very different businesses to run. They're very different e-commerce businesses. And when you're talking to these type of businesses, you often hear yourself saying, look, for normal e-commerce businesses, this is what we would do. But for you, it's different. And you're different because you have a much higher average order value. The length of time takes a long time. And your whole Google ads, your whole Meta ads, your whole email, your whole nurturing is completely different to somebody coming on and buying a low value $50 item.
And also for high ticket businesses, I'm actually running a completely different setup of Google ads to them and Meta ads. It is almost it's not opposite of the compounder, but it's like a different strategy. It's let it roll out. Whereas the compounder and the volume retailer and they're running fairly similar front end ads. But the big ticket is a departure.
And the reason we're not going into detail too much, but the reason why high ticket one timer struggle with ads is because the tracking is often just completely
there's just too much of a distance between the initial look at the product and
too much of a distance, and the device often gets passed around as well, doesn't it? Different devices, so it's like it's always choice. So they have to behave differently. Next one.
Yeah, so the volume retailer is the next one, and that's probably when people think of e-commerce, that's probably what people think of in their mind. So that's like if you look at our biggest clients on the volume retailers, some of our most successful ones that we've been working with for 20 years, like Brook Taverner, they're a volume retailer. So the volume retailer, these brands, they win on breadth, scale, they move large numbers of SKUs at lower margins, not really low margin, but it's not like you're not getting like the 90% margin that you get on a supplement or a shampoo. It's like a reasonable margin. It's like normal retail. And
you typically, you're getting sort of like 1.5 purchases a year. There's a bit of seasonality to them, but it's not like absolutely seasonal. I mean, one of our brands, the bedding brand,
volume retailer.
That is an example, of a volume retailer, and that's a business that we've scaled. It's going to do, if we put it in US dollars, it's going to do probably about $6 million US dollars this year, and we only started it, 2 years ago, and that scaled really nicely. We had a little bit of repeat. We got a reasonable margin. Average order value's gone up nicely. We're leaning into the peaks. And
we're not selling many products yet.
We're
not selling that many products yet. Really, just selling the basics. We're not selling that many products.
Yeah. Well, it's bedding. I mean, it's basically bedding. Yeah, and it's but it's it's a nice simple model that you can take a business from 0 to 6 million. Really quite simply, just focusing on the core fundamentals of getting a volume retailer right. You've got to have enough stock and volume turnaround to be able to do it. And then once you've got the containers coming through, you can pay for your first container, and then obviously you've got the cash flow coming, and it's really nice how it goes. You kind of have to push, and you've got to understand the modeling and the profit velocity to know how hard you can push because you've got the stock coming in. So I find those businesses quite
the
nice
reason
to
it's
work
called
with
the
as well,
volume
actually.
reseller is because there is a point when your product margin gets slightly bigger when you're doing slightly more volume. So for bedding, for example, when we first started out, we were doing short runs, and the margin wasn't as good. And once we got to a certain point where we had the whole, I can't remember the word, is it the loom, the whole run of the, you've been to the factory.
Yeah.
What would you call
Yeah.
it? The whole production line.
It's the whole production,
Yeah.
the production
Once you
line.
got
and there's like
enough
15 in
volume,
the factory, and you need that
Yeah.
running continually because we kept running out of stock. We'd have a couple of sales that would sell well, and they were like, oh god, we've run out of stock, and then we'd have to air freight them over, and that would cost a fortune, and we'd ruin our margin. So it was getting the volume, it was getting the momentum to push.
obviously it's a very good
And
product,
that was,
which helps. But it's kind of like getting all those things coming together in a volume retailer, and then really, like I've said in my notes, it's like the key is efficiency, logistic conversion rates, scale, and through sheer volume. That's really where you win, and it's ultimately it becomes about the maths. And there's obviously a playbook for that, and understanding how to tweak it.
all
and
of
get
them.
more. Yeah, there's a specific playbook for that. So
Yeah.
I think but I think when people talk about e-commerce, if you go to an e-commerce show, an exhibition, more often than not, they're talking about the volume retailer. So great, if you're a volume retailer, that's going to be relevant for you. But if you're a compounding brand or a high ticket one timer or a need-driven supplier or a seasonal specialist, you're probably sitting in that lecture thinking, well, is this relevant for me? And it might not be. That's the difficulty of e-commerce. So the next one, the need-driven supplier. So these are functional brands selling products that solve a very specific need, often purchased when the problem arises. Mattress protectors, health devices, car batteries, dust spares,
any
fridge spares.
Any sort of spare part related, isn't it? Anything that's a problem, I think, oh my god, I need this, and they tend to need it quite quickly. So it becomes about availability. Is one of the things, and confidence that it's going to fit, confidence it's going to do. I mean, and the great examples of that, and we worked with for many years, is some of the biggest car part retailers. When I say car part, not car parks, it's car parts. Because people often think I say, "What when did you work with car? But you didn't know you had car parks, like NCP car parks." No, car parts. So and we were there. We've done loads of work with those guys, Spare Part Online. And scaled them up to nearly 100 million. One of them that we worked with for nearly 10 years. In the UK, and that was a really nice.
Yeah, and it wasn't that fancy. And I think that was part of the problem. Not part of the problem, but part of the thing with that one is actually not diving into all the shiny little things that distracted us from the main things in that business, which was availability, pricing, and ease of use on the site. Like those are the
navigational flow.
Yeah.
It's funny. I mean, I look back. I mean, there was somebody we were with for quite a long time, and they were selling a really dull product that was for like shop fitters. Like basically casters. All right, casters and wheels. And they were a lovely, lovely family, a really nice family business. And when we were designing it, going through the consultation of actually designing this was for one of the agencies that we used to run, and she said, right, I want to make it look like the Rolex site. I wanted to make it look really aspirational and just like the Rolex site. And I was like, hang on. You're selling caster wheels that people need next day to go on the bottom of a trolley in the factory. What are you doing? Anyway,
it's weird because she would have wanted that because that's what she wanted to visit herself. And yet... not relevant for any of her customers. It'd be like saying if she had a factory making casters, I don't think they made them, but let's say she had a factory making casters and you've got a factory making Rolex and you said, I want the factory to look exactly like the Rolex factory. It wouldn't make sense, would it? Because you'd be like, well, no, because casters are made in a different way. They're just like, it's not going to work. It's like all the,
Yeah, and it was also like, one-off replacement. It wasn't like, amazing candidized. Anyway, that's an example of what can happen.
Yeah, so you cannot, if I break my window with a handle and I replace the handle, you cannot sell me another handle once I've replaced it the week after, no matter how hard you try. And so you can't use the same structure as a compounding brand or volume retailer because it's just the customer will not have it. It will just not work.
You know, one of my favorite businesses to work with is the problem need driven supplier. I said why. So I like working with a need driven supplier because the problem's obvious, and that's what I love. Because ultimately, that from a marketer, what you want is a clearly identifiable problem that people are aware of. And so, like a car battery, like I know exactly what the problem is, and I know the consequences of not fixing that problem. So the problem's really obvious, and I find that really nice. Whereas if it's like a fashion brand, there's a high ticket. It could be harder to identify what the problem is, because the problem isn't really a problem. If you're trying to buy a nice outfit to go out, it's an emotional one, and it's like a lifestyle one, and that's a totally different playbook. And they're in very interesting businesses themselves. Well, lots of success with those, but the need-driven suppliers I like because it's so goddamn obvious what you need to demonstrate. Which is why I think if you get it right, you can scale them.
They're also very
nicely.
useful for split testing. If you split test and you find a split test that works, that split test will probably last forever because the customer doesn't change. It's when, like with some of the businesses that I've classed as like boring businesses, they're the most exciting because they just like literally, they're like a golden goose that gives forever and ever and ever. And those are often some of the most sellable businesses as well, because the market doesn't change, the customers don't change, they buy every year when they need it. It's very stable markets. Even in a downturn, people still need that product because you can't live without a fridge, so you're going to have fridge replaced. There's things that
and I think
happen.
there's a little bit of competitive protection in the IP. Like it's sometimes a bit complicated.
Yeah.
How do you a bit of product knowledge of how you apply it, and there's
Bit of a
loads of
moat.
great stuff. I mean, there's lots of examples of where we've taken businesses like the filter guys. Loads of I mean, they're doing some big numbers now, where it was the same product. It was like a filter. I won't say what industry, but it was like a filter, and there was a generic filter. But instead of saying this is a generic filter that fits all these different brands, they duplicated the filter for 100 times and called it the name of the application that it fit. And I was like, that makes sense, doesn't it? And all of a sudden, then you've got something you can put in Google Ads, and you've got something that's relevant in. Anyway, those businesses can often go quite quick if you get it right. What's the next one?
So the last one is the seasonal specialist. And these brands do the bulk of their business in a narrow window. So we're talking Christmas, summer, Mother's Day, back to school. So again, different playbook, cash flow management,
completely different.
Maximizing peak season, building off-season retention strategies. And so we've got a couple of these at the moment. So like Stormy Chroma, who sells those hats hats in America. Obviously, nobody really wants to buy a woolly hat in the middle of summer. She's a seasonal specialist. Same as the hamper company we're working with, the British Hamper Company in the UK at the moment.
Hamper, really seasonal.
Very seasonal specialist. And like I said, some of the businesses that are volume retailer, like some of the businesses standing too. So you've got like the homeware companies. They are a bit volume retailer and a bit seasonal specialist, because you get, you can go from doing 80,000 a month to like 500,000 a month in your peak during homeware, because it becomes a seasonal specialist. So those are the playbook is relevant.
Be greater
for
shoes.
Those.
Be
greater shoes.
It's another client. Massive. Back to school.
Yeah, back to school. Great shoes. Disrupting the market.
He's just had his peak. We were looking at his numbers in the number sheet every day, and
smashed it. We can't say exactly what he did, but he did. He did very, very well. Yeah,
it really, really worked. And actually, these businesses, a seasonal specialist, is you can take them to the next level by pushing the peaks harder. That's generally what I would say. You kind of think, we're trying to even out the troughs. Let's try and get the troughs. No.
Yeah.
Leave the troughs, push the peaks.
We've got a
and you
whole
lean into
playbook
it.
for
Yeah.
seasonal specialists and all the
Or
things
to
you should be
leave the
doing
truck,
off season. And like we've done with Stormy Chroma, like, you know, like, well, I won't speak about Stormy Chroma, but I'm talking about like in the off season, it's like minimizing the losses because you've still got those fixed costs you're carrying, and then pushing your peaks way harder and understanding what you can do in your off season to kind of push your peaks and then to be ready with it. And like an example of that business is like the way you talk to your agency or the person running your ads in that peak is completely different than how you would talk to your agency during the volume retail. Like it is, there's just key differences in it. And so those are the five businesses. And I mean, what we try to do with the 5 businesses is not like, I was tempted to give them names, like different things, but I think the beauty in something is when someone can hear the name and they can understand which business they are straight away. It's not about, the secret isn't in like, oh, I've got to go to the Hammersley Brothers and find out which type of business it is. That's not the secret. The secret is, well, there's no secret. The secret is actually understanding you're one of those 5 type of businesses and then understanding that there's a playbook specifically for your type of business, so that you're effectively, you know, you're running your e-commerce brand and you're making, you know, progress. Because a lot of the time you're like putting all the hours in, you're doing all the things, ads, emails, new offers, everything, tweaking the site, but you're not making the money you should. You know, suppliers get paid, agency gets paid, your team gets paid, everyone's get paid, but you, and the business doesn't grow. And I think that the reason it doesn't grow is because you're chasing so many shiny things for the business that isn't your type. So if you can understand your type, then everything becomes so much clearer to understand exactly what comes down. So step 1 is finding out what type of business you are. And then step 2 is all the stuff we talk about, profit velocity. So once we know what business you are, we can work out your profit velocity and what right spend it is for now. And then step 3 is going into the playbook for your business type to ignite your profit velocity based on where you're at. Yeah.
That's cool. That's exciting.
Yeah.
It's really exciting. These are the moments where when you've gone through that, it's you look back and you realize actually it's more simple than you thought. And it's like, looking up at a mountain, when you're at the bottom and you're looking up and you think, oh my God, I can't see it. But when you're at the top, you look down, you can see the path and you can realize the path you've taken. And obviously you can navigate.
What's nice about it as well
more quickly
is that the people on the programs can go, I'm a so-and-so business. Who else is a so-and-so business? I want to talk to them. And then they can start talking to each other, and they're in completely different industries, but because they are a volume, a compounder business, there's going to be the same strategy is going to be relevant for those two guys. And the same thing for like a high ticket. Like, again, it's going to be similar for those. And so therefore they know who to swap notes with. And when someone talks around, when they share something that's working for them, they go, oh, well, they're the same kind of business that I am. So that makes sense. And that's when it really starts to kick in, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And it's, simple. Easy.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
that was
thanks,
good.
Mark. Thanks, everybody.
And we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Bye.